Hello everyone. In today's session, we will be discussing one of the greatest tragedies of all times, Hippolytus by Euripides. In ancient Greece, drama played an important role in the cultural life of the city. Plays were staged during the festival of Dionysius, the god of fertility. Dionysius symbolized both creation and destruction, since rebirth or rejuvenation is often preceded by death. Plays were staged in temple premises, and nearly half the town went to watch these plays. Playwrights competed with one another for the laurels, and each of the competitors was allowed to stage a sequence of 3 plays. In its origin, Greek drama consisted of 3 kinds of plays: tragedies, comedies, and satires. The chorus played an important part in tragedies. In fact, in the early tragedies, there was only one character on the stage, wearing the masks of different characters during different scenes. The story was narrated by the chorus. The chorus occupied the center stage. Eventually, tragic drama acquired more characters and the chorus slowly disappeared from the stage. In fact, Euripides is considered to be the playwright who contributed to the gradual disappearance of the chorus. He laid greater emphasis on dialogue, and this meant the chorus had a much reduced part in the play. Drama is derived from the word dran, which means to do. With the gradual disappearance of the chorus, drama truly became an art form that narrated a story through the words and actions of the characters themselves. Euripides, the author of Hippolytus, appeared on the Athenian cultural scene at a time when it was teeming with competitors. A new writer must have found it difficult to make a mark on the Athenian stage. Aeschylus had just passed away and Sophocles was ruling the roost. Sophocles would contribute to the Athenian theatre for another 15 years or so. There were many others whose names have not outlived their times, who won laurels at the annual theatre festivals. Euripides' originality made him one of the most misunderstood poets of his times. He presented his first group of tragedies at the Dionysian festival in 455 BC, but didn't win his first victory until 441 BC. In fact, he won only 5 awards, and the 5th one wasn't awarded to him until after his death. But lack of recognition did not dampen his spirit. Euripides' innovative solutions to religious and ethical issues of his times and his new, unconventional approach to the human dilemmas and predicaments presented in the legends make him one of the greatest tragedians of all times. The story of Medea is a classic case in point. Euripides ignores the version of the legend where Medea's children are killed by the Corinthians and makes Medea the killer of her own children in order to explore the human condition in all its complexity. Euripides moved to Macedonia when he was 73 in search of a socio-cultural atmosphere more conducive to his kind of writing, and some of his best works were produced during this period. Euripides wrote about 90 plays, but only 18 of these are available to us today. Euripides' popularity amongst the people of Athens is evident from the fact that the whole of Athens mourned his death in 406 BC. His 4 plays written during his stay in Macedonia were awarded the first prize. The play opens with Aphrodite, the goddess of love, announcing her intention to punish Hippolytus for his refusal to worship her. We learn from her that the gods have as frail an ego as human beings. And wheresoever from Pontus to the far, red west men dwell and see the glad day star, and worship me, the pious heart I bless, and wreck that life that lives in stubbornness. For that there is, even in a great God's mind, that hungereth for the praise of humankind. Soon we meet Hippolytus returning from his hunt. We learn that he takes pride in his bachelorhood and his unblemished character. He prays to Artemis, the god of the woods and hunting, and refuses to pay his respects to Aphrodite. From the conversation between the old huntsman and Hippolytus, we understand that Hippolytus, while does not disrespect Aphrodite, will not bow down before her either. The old huntsman makes a fervent appeal to Aphrodite to pardon the proud young bachelor for his misdemeanor, but we have already learned from Aphrodite herself that she is in no mood to forgive Hippolytus. Next, we meet Phaedra, the queen of Trozen and Hippolytus' stepmother. The chorus describes her distraught condition and speculate on the reasons for her present state. In the course of Phaedra's conversation with her nurse, we learn that she has fallen hopelessly in love with her stepson. Phaedra, despite knowing that it is a kind of sickness, even madness, cannot help being in love. But Phaedra's plan to kill herself, and with it her burning desire for Hippolytus, a desire that will shame the family and ruin the future of her children, is thwarted by the imprudent nurse. Without consulting Phaedra, the well-meaning woman appoints herself as the bearer of Phaedra's love tidings to Hippolytus. Hippolytus flies into a rage when he hears about his stepmother's love for him. Phaedra, who hears his outburst against herself and womankind, is frightened that he may complain about her misplaced affections to his father Theseus. Hurt by his rejection and afraid that her husband might humiliate her when he finds out about her love for her stepson, Phaedra decides to commit suicide and blame it on Hippolytus' lust for her. Phaedra kills herself and, as she promises, leaves a tablet which blames her suicide on Hippolytus, accusing him of making sexual advances towards her. Hippolytus, a man of his word, does not deny her version of events, bound as he is by the oath of secrecy that he makes to the nurse. He only pleads with his father to trust him. The furious Theseus sends him into exile. But unknown to Hippolytus, Theseus invokes his father, the sea god Poseidon, to ask him to kill Hippolytus that very day. Soon a messenger brings Theseus the news that his son has met with an accident and is seriously injured. Theseus, still unhappy with his son, but somewhat touched by Hippolytus's present condition, agrees to see his son in death throes. At this point, Artemis, the goddess that Hippolytus worships, appears to Theseus and admonishes him for wrongly punishing his noble son. Theseus is overwhelmed by guilt and grief for his noble son. Hippolytus meets his guilt-ridden father and his deity, who weeps for him and informs him about Aphrodite's scheme that has destroyed them. Hippolytus dies a happy man in the arms of his grief-stricken father. He will be remembered as a tearful Artemis informs him and the audience as one who died for his nobleness. In the battle between the vain Aphrodite and Hippolytus, the final victory is Hippolytus's. He dies an honorable man who lived and died for what he believed in, making even the gods admire him. The chorus sums this up for us. On all this folk, both low and high, a grief hath fallen beyond men's fears. There cometh a throbbing of many tears, a sound as of waters falling. For when great men die, a mighty name and a bitter cry rise up from a nation calling. Even as Hippolytus rises above the state of an ordinary mortal, Aphrodite emerges as someone ordinary, someone who destroys innocent lives to satisfy her vain pride. Hippolytus. Hippolytus is a hero who is damned by his inflexibility. He is a devoted son to his father and a model citizen who abides by the law of the land. The major flaw in his character is his failure to appreciate the fact that each human being is different. His total lack of respect for ways of life other than his own is shown through his refusal to pay respects to Aphrodite. This inflexibility, which some consider his hubris, leads to his mishandling his stepmother's affections for him, which results in his humiliation and ultimately his death. In comparison with the other characters in the play, Hippolytus is more one-dimensional. He merges with his values and his beliefs, and the audience hardly gets to see any other aspect of his personality. In this, however, he provides a perfect foil to Phaedra. In being made to pay for his inflexibility with his dear life, Hippolytus emerges as a tragic hero, winning the audience's sympathy and forcing them to reflect on the human condition. Phaedra. The character of Phaedra is one of Euripides' finest achievements. She is one of the few human, all too human characters in the world of classical Greek drama. It is her head that rules over her heart, and we see her moving from hatred to love and from love to hatred for Hippolytus in the course of the play. She is someone who is totally and helplessly swayed by her emotions and passion. Euripides portrays her more as a victim than as a perpetrator of an offense or an antagonist. She is hopelessly in love with Hippolytus, even as she struggles with her sense of guilt over her forbidden love and dark passion. Her frailty enhances her humanity, even if her final act of revenge does not endear her to the audience. The audience can see why she behaves the way she does, even if they don't exactly approve of her behavior. In attributing her illegitimate desire to the machinations of a scorned goddess, Euripides further exonerates Phaedra of her guilt. As a passionate creature who is burdened with the task of setting the familial standards for the rest of the society, as a victim of forces that are far too powerful for her to control, Phaedra leaves the audience with mixed feelings. They don't want to judge her in a hurry, lest they judge themselves. Theseus. Theseus is remembered in the play for his erroneous judgment and his ruthless patriarchy. As a patriarch who has authority over the family, he imposes the severest form of punishment on his son, whom he sees as a violator of the family code. His male pride does not let him entertain the thought that his wife could have betrayed him. Ironically, Theseus is known for his amorous adventures, which continue even after his marriage to Phaedra. He allows his pride and his anger to cloud his judgment, and he imposes the severest of punishments upon his son, death in exile. Though he too is shown to be a victim of the evil schemes of a goddess with hurt pride, Theseus's hurried decision to banish his son does not make him worthy of the crown he wears. He is seen as a vain human being and a poor judge of character. While Hippolytus and Phaedra have redeeming qualities that make them more acceptable to the audience, Theseus emerges from the play as a totally flawed human being, unworthy of both the title of the patriarch and the crown. Aphrodite. Aphrodite is an interesting character in the play. As the mythical embodiment of love, she plays her role to the potential. She makes Hippolytus pay for his contempt for love and his absence of empathy. She makes the queen, who hates Hippolytus at first, fall head over heels in love with the very man, showing us that love and hatred are kindred emotions, and one can move from the one to the other fairly quickly. The Aphrodite myth, which Euripides borrows from, also makes us realize that love is an ego state by making the goddess of love a very proud and egocentric person. Aphrodite is the theatrical metaphor for an important part of our own psyche, and through the character of Aphrodite, Euripides achieves his artistic purpose. The play deals with several important themes. The first of them is the one relating to the two extremes of human behavior: uncontrolled desire and excessive control. In the context of Euripides' play, uncontrolled passion is disastrous for the individual and the society, just as excessive self-control often forces one into conflict with the rest of society. Phaedra's attraction to her stepson is so powerful that it almost becomes a force that is independent of her own will. She is torn between the fulfillment of this illegitimate desire and the social norms she is expected to protect. Her failure to bridle her passion leads to her own death and the death of an innocent man in the prime of his youth. Euripides seems to warn his audience that if passion is not controlled by reason, it will soon take full control of the soul and the individual will have to destroy himself or herself in order to free themselves from the slavery of passion. At the other extreme of this spectrum of human behavior is excessive self-control. Hippolytus' celibacy turns into a kind of obsessive behavior and he loses his capacity for empathy. He is disgusted by the affections of his stepmother as he fails to appreciate human frailty. It is natural for someone who has never been tempted by an emotion like love to be surprised by the passionate attachment of one human being to another. But Hippolytus fails to acknowledge that others can be different from him, can be creatures of passion, and this lack of empathy is one of the causes of the tragedy in the play. Euripides seems to remind his audience that while it is all right to stick to one's chosen path and not allow any distractions, one should not lose one's capacity for empathy, a quality that defines our humanity. The next major theme the play explores is the conflict between nature and culture. Phaedra cannot resist the charm of Hippolytus. She is drawn to him just as any beautiful woman is attracted to a handsome young man. But she is tormented by her desire because she has internalized the cultural code that forbids any relationship outside marriage. The code has taught her that any romantic involvement with one's own children is a sin. Hippolytus too is a product of this culture. He can only see Phaedra as his stepmother, a role that the society has assigned to her. This is the source of the tragic conflict in the play. Theseus is no different from the other two characters. He behaves in a way that his culture has shaped him to behave. He refuses to believe his son's version of the story, choosing instead to trust his dead wife, mainly because doubting her fidelity will mean seeing himself as a failed husband. The uniqueness of the play lies in the fact that Euripides makes the conflict between two very powerful forces that shape human beings play out on the stage. This is done without making Phaedra and Hippolytus exchange angry words on the stage. In his own unique style, Euripides makes us realize what complex creations human beings are. The third important theme the play deals with is one about human judgment. All the characters in the play make major errors of judgment. Phaedra fails to convince herself that a person like Hippolytus, who is defined by his celibacy and his resoluteness, will reciprocate her love. This realization would have saved her life even when her feeling of guilt did not. She allows her secret hope that her love would be eventually rewarded to cloud her judgment, and this leads to her tragic death. The nurse makes a major error of judgment in blurting out the queen's love for Hippolytus, ignoring her mistress's plan to wait for a more opportune moment. But for the nurse's mistake, events could have taken a different turn altogether. Theseus too allows his pride in his manhood to interfere with his judgment. He turns a deaf ear to his son's fervent appeal to take a rational decision. Finally, Hippolytus misjudges the extent of emotional damage he is likely to cause his stepmother, the queen, when he declares that he finds her affections revolting. The tragedy could have been avoided if the characters had been more judicious. This seems to be one of the messages of the play. Euripides' Hippolytus is a classic. It is the story of people in ancient Greece. But the issues that it raises are relevant to audience across ages and places. It is a lesson on the virtues of a balanced life, one where the head and the heart, reason and emotions play their respective roles effectively. It demonstrates to the audience what happens when human life is determined either totally by reason or by passion. While it highlights the frailty of human existence, it also points at the possibility of a happy life when one balances one's emotions with reason. The broken body of Hippolytus at once reminds us of our limitations as human beings and the need to constantly monitor ourselves to make sure we don't err either on the side of cold rationality or on that of stormy passion. This is signaled by the writer when he makes Artemis swear that she will do to an Aphrodite worshipper what Aphrodite has done to Hippolytus. The conflict between reason and emotions, Euripides tells us, is a continuous affair, and unless one keeps strict vigil, one will end up as the characters in the play. The play is a classic example of a tragic work of art in that it presents a series of sad events, but does not leave them unexplained. The death of the two leading characters in the play, sad as it is, makes the audience wiser to the chain of causes and consequences, and thereby instructs them on how to lead their life. It is in this sense that the play is a true work of tragic art. With this, we come to the conclusion of the present session. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you.